Welcome to the True Demon Lord show. I am the True Demon Lord Franco, and today we're going to be looking at scoring fixed secondaries with Chaos Daemons. So we did this, I want to say April, May. Basically, when we started the channel up, we did a video talking about scoring fixed secondaries with demons, but of course, that was back in Leviathan. We are now in Pariah. The way you score secondaries in general has changed in a way. And obviously, fixed secondaries, generally choices haven't changed, but is a little bit of a difference. And of course, the way you score actions have completely changed because they weren't really a thing. Actions back in Leviathan, it was just your unit could do something if it was eligible to shoot, and it couldn't do anything else, which basically was the precursor to actions again. But of course, now the way that's changed, you can no longer it's no longer about being eligible to shoot, but actually being eligible to do the action, which is a completely different thing. So yeah, so we're going to give you a rundown of the best options, in my opinion, for demons, and how to build your list kind of around those options, and then just talking about scoring fix in general with demons. So before we get into the rest of the video, if you really like the content, please leave a like and subscribe. It's completely free and it helps the channel out massively. Gets us out to more and more of our fellow demon players and helps us, be able to not just teach, but help other demon players grow, which is what this channel is all about. And then if you really like the content, consider becoming a true denizen with the YouTube memberships, where you will get access to our member exclusive Discord. There we go. I couldn't get my words out. Member exclusive Discord, where you'll be able to have more of a say on what we release and produce for the channel, by being able to vote in video option polls and etc. etc. Get member exclusive videos, which will be far more in depth, some more tactical and kind of a coach, have a coaching style to it, I guess. And then a whole host of other benefits. But of course, we are right at the beginning of this, so we're growing. So it is a start from the ground up. But yes, that's growing quite fast, so that's exciting. So let's get into the rest of the video. Planning for fixed secondaries. So fixed secondaries aren't generally something you should just take on a whim. There are some occasions, I guess, if your opponent is glaringly giving away certain fixed options. But I think, especially in Pariah, you kind of have to have a plan around it. So you want to be an army that has the ability to score these secondaries. Generally, armies with a lot of mobility and up and down style abilities as well. For example, Realm of Chaos for us. Things like hyper-equipped Necrons, Grey Knights, etc., etc. Armies that can just consistently be all over the board, be in positions where they're just going to be able to keep consistently scoring these type of secondaries, depending on what they go with. So that means you should really have a set plan for which secondaries you take. So in your head, when you're building your list, you need to think, okay, what secondaries am I going to go with? And build around that, which then leads on to taking units capable of scoring you those secondaries. So if you're taking less, say for example, engage in all front and establish locus, which may or may not be some of the best options, you then want to make sure you're having smaller footprints, so for example, a beast or a unit of 3 flamers or little characters, so you're able to get them into gaps or easier fit in if you're using denizens of the warp, and for your 3-inch deep strike, so you can drop in, do your actions, and then maybe make sure you have speed in your list. For example, screamers are very good at positioning themselves and then flying into parts of the board for engage, or even behind enemy lines, etc., etc. So you're going to choose your secondaries to build around, and then start choosing the units that are capable of scoring those secondaries, and then also making sure you have enough, kind of making sure you can plan those turns out so you can consistently score those secondaries. Then you should always have a backup plan if your normal chosen secondaries are not suitable for a specific game, whether that be because of your opponent's list. For example, say you like behind enemy lines and engage on all behind enemy lines and establish locus, but your opponent has 3 units that can, deep strike denial. So things like Space Marine infiltrators or navigators or etc. etc. Units that basically prevent your units from coming down from reserves or deep strike within 12 inches. So if that's the case, and they know you're going to be going with engage, not engage, we keep saying engage, behind enemy lines and and or established locus, they're basically just going to line their entire deployment zone up with that and then push out to stop your other units from speeding up, which is just going to basically screw you over. So when you get to the table, you should always have a backup set of secondaries that you would want to take for fixed, just in case, again, your opponent's list is just a counter for that, or the mission itself maybe just doesn't lend itself to you scoring those type of secondaries, or the deployment, the map, whatever. Maybe if it's let's think about it. Like first of all, battle, the corners, it's easier to screen out than it is, say, Hammer and Anvil or Dawn of War / tipping, not tipping point, sweeping engagement, etc., etc. So always make sure that, yes, you might have your normal plan, but always be willing to adapt, because if you just go in with the same plan all the time, you will eventually come up into something or an opponent that is able to basically screw with that. Again, whether it just be for the list or the situation of the mission or deployment zone. So always make sure you are able to stop that, or to be able to, shake it up should you need to. And then again, making sure you're able to score enough points in balance with your primary. So what I mean by that is, again, looking at the primary points, maybe it's Burden of Trust. And we all know Burden of Trust is a bit of a mission. That's the one where you score 4 points for each objective you hold in the middle. You can't score your backfield, but you then can guard on the middle and guard on your backfield and get 2 points at the end of your opponent's turn for each time you guard. That's generally quite hard to score loads on. Sometimes you can get it if you just have a good game and you run your opponent down. But, in those really close burden games, you're looking at like 70-point wins. Sometimes I've seen 60, 50-point wins, depending, if you're able to just keep denying each other primary. And so if you go with a fixed game, that is basically going to make it harder for you to achieve those primary points. And then again, if your opponent now is able to stop you or mess about and limit those scoring, it means you're just going to have a bad time and you're going to get outscored. So again, like we just said, like up above with having a backup plan, make sure you're looking at it. You're not just always going in with the same plan. Make sure you are looking at the situation and thinking, can I realistically score a good amount of points? I always look at it for fixed, and I always think, can I score 18 and 17 roughly? Basically not dropping, like, can I score 35 points is what I tend to look at. And if I can, I believe I can, then I go with it. And then thinking about how easy your opponent might be able to shut those secondaries down. Again, we've basically covered that. If your opponent has loads of deep strike denial, if your opponent has very good overwatch, if your opponent is able to trigger battle shocks, etc., in loads of different areas, then again, you need to be able to also realize, again, like if it's a big named opponent or someone that you know of, or someone knows this person and has told you they're very good at the game, etc., again, sometimes you have to think, okay, are they going to be good enough to basically know what I'm going to do and shut you down? Because as soon as you go with fixed, your opponent has an idea what's going to happen. For example, a while ago, I played a fellow Demon player at an event, and he went with behind enemy lines and Locust. And I basically looked at it and was like, okay, I know I can't stop him all game because, again, Demons or any army that goes up and down 3-inch deep shots are quite hard to stop. But I knew that as long as I could hold the points down for the first couple turns and take about 7-8 points off of him, I knew then that I could just keep 5ing him on primary and put myself in a position where I knew I could score realistic, like safe primary, which I managed to do. I knew I was going to hold the game, and that was fine. And again, being against another Demon player helped because I know Demons inside out, back to front, and I'm very experienced in the mirror match, so that also helped. But yes, so you've always got to think, can my opponent get a massive advantage by knowing what I'm already going to be trying to score and be able to stop me? So long and short of it is, have a plan in your head for your secondaries, have a backup plan should that not be able to work. Make sure you have the right units for those secondaries and the backup secondaries, and then always analyze the situation. Is it a suitable mission? Is my opponent's list going to screw me over? Is my opponent good enough to stop me scoring those points, etc., etc.? Because there is a lot more. While you may feel like going and taking fixed basically gives you the plan and you know what you need to score, and you're basically eliminating the randomness of it, which you are. You're also very susceptible to then being done in by your opponent, because now they know exactly what you're trying to do, not just your primary points, but also now your secondaries, and they can kind of have a hand in stopping that. So, the best fixed options, in my opinion, for demons will be behind enemy lines, because it requires you to have either one unit wholly in your opponent's deployment zone, which will get you 3 points, which is quite nice. 3 points on your on the mini version is very good, or 4 points for 2 units. So if you go second in a game, you're going to be able to pick up one or both 2 units if they're both in the Shadows of Chaos, and be able to bring them back down in your opponent's deployment zone. Of course, your opponent will generally screen if they're a decent enough opponent. So you might get 1 unit down with Denizens of the Warp, but then further as the game goes on, as you're able to make holes on the board, you're going to be able to get more and more space. If you bring down a Greater Demon or Be'lakor, you can now drop something like with Denizens of the Warp, you can then drop something 6 inches away, and that'll get you 2 units in. But also be aware, if you take behind enemy line and go first, unless you've got something like Seekers or even Nurglings and you like surge and charge into something that's not going to kill the unit, you're not going to score any points, and you're going to be a turn down, which now means you really do need to be trying to hit that 4 every turn. But behind enemy lines is a good option, especially if you go second. Then we've got engage on all fronts, which is, for me, one of my favorite things to do when I do fixed. If I do fixed, I don't do a lot of fixing prior, I can't lie, but engage is definitely one of my favorite options, and that's being in table quarters. Now, it used to be that you had to be 3 inches from another quarter. That has now changed. That's gone. So now you can basically be just in a quarter, which is really good. But you must be 6 inches away from the center of the board. So basically, there's a 6-inch bubble around the center of the board that you can't be in. Otherwise, there is no restriction apart from being wholly in a table quarter with a unit. Again, if you're taking Screamers, Fiends, Seekers, Fleshhounds, you're able to have that speed where you can kind of, get into different parts of the board, and you can drop things like Beasts, Flamers, Greater Demons, etc., in the different areas to be able to get your 4 points on that. And again, if you're going second, you're going to be able to potentially get a nice big 4 turn 1. If not, you can get a 2 in most cases. Really, the only type of games you're going to struggle with is if you're playing on tipping point / hammer, or Dawn of War / sweeping engagement. Now, if you've got, again, Seekers or Nurglings, that will be a way around that. You'll be able to get in those secondary in those positions, especially if you go first. But if you don't, which I don't run a lot, like I've dropped my Nurglings more recently, I don't run Seekers. Yes, you're going to struggle a little bit on that. But I think engages is very, very good, especially for us, that we can get all over the board. We are pretty fast as well, generally, which is, nice. And then we've got established locus, which used to be teleport homers in Leviathan, and obviously it was a go-to for demons. I loved engage, and locus were my go-to for fixed, because it used to be 3 points and 4 points, but it is now 2 points, 4 points, which is fine. What it should be. It was far too easy to score like easy points on that. And basically, your unit will do an action within 6 inches of the center of the board for 2 points, or an action in your opponent's deployment zone for 4 points. No, you don't have to be wholly within either of those, so you can just have one model in a unit slightly just tipping within 6 inches of the center and doing it, or again, a unit just tipping in, or a model just tipping inside your opponent's deployment zone and again doing it. So locus is just very good, because even if you go first, Nurglings used to be amazing for this. They obviously can't do actions anymore because OC0 can no longer do actions. But again, Screamers, Fiends, Fleshhounds, even Greater Demons like the Keeper or whatever are very good at this, especially if you've got a nice bit of terrain that hides you. You can kind of sit behind that terrain, keep hidden, while also be within 6 inches of the center, meaning now you're not just going to sacrifice a unit to be able to do it. And again, turn 2 onwards, if you've already got reserves, you can bring them down, and then you can also start like uppy downy every turn to drop into the opponent's deployment zone. And to be honest, I think it's incredibly hard unless you're getting massively tabled or beaten down really hard, or your opponent is basically tagging every unit you have, knowing that you're not going to be able to maybe fight out of that situation. I do think it's quite hard not to, even going first, scoring 2 points and then 4 points for the rest of the game, or 4 points for the whole game every turn. But again, a smart opponent will just try and limit your action units, your action monkeys, like your screamers, your fiends, your flamers, and then basically make you do it, either force you to do it with greater demons, which you don't want to do because they're generally going to be doing utility, or damage, sorry. So you don't really want to waste a bloodthirst on going up and down and doing deploy teleport homers or establish locus. You want that bloodthirst getting stuck in. So they are, in my opinion, the better options. Then we have situational fixed options. So these are the ones that will come up depending on the opponent's list, the mission, the deployment, etc. So bring it down, killing vehicles, killing monsters. I have only put vehicle units, but it is vehicle. Let's actually change that. It is vehicle / monsters. So if you kill a unit that has 14 or less wounds, you get 2 points. And then you then have cumulative stacking. So if the unit has 15 plus wounds, then you get an additional 2 points. And then if that unit has 20 or more wounds, it gets an additional 2 points. So for example, our greater demons are 18 wounds, so they give away 4 points. But our named greater demons, or even the great unclean ones, they're all on 20 wounds or 22 wounds in the case of Roticus. So instead, they give away 6 points on Bring It Down. And that's why when building your list, you need to be careful that you're balancing the monsters right. So either you're not taking too many monsters. 4 monsters is a good number, because you're generally going to have 2 or 3 that are going to be about 18 wounds, and then 1 or 2 that's going to be 20 or more wounds. Unless you're going Bellicor, Great Unclean One, Roticus if you want, or Shalaxi, Scarbrand, in which case that is going to be 3 of them that give away 6 points, 1 that gives away 4 points. So always think in your head, because that's how you should always think when you are taking your monsters. Am I giving up easy Bring It Down? I generally like, though, if someone goes to Bring It Down Assassinate when I've got 4 monsters, because you can play around that. Even if you play a bit more cagey, you then make sure you go for the units that can really threaten your monsters. And yeah, you can, again, like we said again, with people controlling your secondaries, you can now control someone else's secondaries. Now, make sure if you're taking Bring It Down, you're obviously going to be doing it against armies at Tau if they're taking that retaliation cadre, because they're going to have a lot of vehicles. Their battle suit units are vehicles. They have changed it, though. They used to give away 2 points per battle suit. It's now 2 points per unit. But if they've got a unit with a character in it, so a battle suit leader plus 3 battle suits, and then they've got, is it shield drones that give them +1 wound each? And if they've got them on all of them, they're now going to give away 4 points. Riptides give away 4 points. Skyrays give away, they might only give away, oh no, I don't. I think Riptides actually only give away 2 points. So again, it's going to depend on how many vehicles they have. But Retaliation Cadre tends to have a lot of battle suits, which, unless it's like Shadow Sun or Stealth suits, if it's Ghost Kills, Riptides, the normal Crisis suits, etc., etc. Storm Surges, they do give away Bring It Down. Other armies like Guard with loads of tanks, Knights, Imperial and Chaos, obviously give away that in abundance. But make sure you can do it. If you're only taking like a Great Unclean One, Bellicor, and a Keeper of Secrets, and then some Fiends and some scoring bits, your vehicle monster killing power is a bit lacking, so you don't really want to take this. But if you've got Shalaxi, who's very good at doing this on her own anyway, a Bloodthirster, Scarbrand, Rem Masters, Blood Crushers, then of course, yes, you're probably going to want to be taking Bring It Down in the right situation. Then we have Cleanse, which is do an action on an objective. You don't have to control it when you start the action, which is in your movement phase, or shooting phase, sorry. But you do have to control it at the end of your turn. So you get 2 points for 1 objective, 4 points for 2. I only like Cleanse in the very rare circumstances, and that's generally if you're playing on you're playing a game where the mission rule is hidden supplies, which gives you 4 objectives in the middle. That means there's going to be two objectives on essentially either side of the board. Two are closer to, or one closer to you, one more towards the middle, another one towards the middle, and one closer to your opponent. That means you have, again, two objectives that are you're able to fight for and get good cleanse on. But if you're playing into an army that has a lot of OC or ways to, again, force you into battle shocks and make you fail them, like Tyranids, or can manipulate your OC, like Death Guard can half your OC. If you go with cleanse and you've got a lot of like multiple OC units or models, they will probably go with the like -1 OC, I think. And then obviously we have like Rotigus, who's a very good counter for it as well. So cleanse I like in the very rare circumstance. Knights are also terrible to do it against because they have a lot of War Dogs and Armigers, which are OC 8 each. Plus they've also got, the bigger knights. And if you're not able to cut through those knights reliably, you're just not going to score it. And scoring 2 points a turn is just not good enough. And then we have Assassinate. Now, Assassination, generally, you should always go by this tagline. Assassination is generally a trap. Now, a smart opponent will stop you getting this because if they've got loads of little characters and they're in units, they will do things like hide them behind walls so you can't just precision them out. And in some cases, they will just hide them entirely. If you've got no line of sight and they can kind of stop you getting close to them, sometimes they might just keep them separate because it's just not worth giving you, the buff that they give their unit is just not worth giving away 4 points. So yes, you've got to really think about Assassination. And your opponent really needs to be rocking like 7 to 8 characters, and most of them have to be fairly easy to kill or easy for you to get to. So yeah, Assassination I don't like. I think it's too much of a trap, but there are rare circumstances or situational circumstances where it does come up. And then we have not great / rarer options. Again, Assassinate, it can be a real trap. You've got to be careful. Call the Horde. So Call the Horde was one of the newer ones that came into Pariah. And it's essentially about killing big units. So you get 5 points for each destroyed enemy unit if that destroyed infantry enemy unit. If the starting strength of that unit was 20 or the total wounds of that unit was 25 or more. That does not include the character. I'm pretty sure that's what just got updated. So it's just the unit itself, or does it include the character? I might include the character. I can't remember. I should have really double checked that. But either way, you orcs, maybe crew to an extent, those type of armies. Again, you've got to be comfortable with being able to plot through that many infantry bodies. If you've got bloodthirsters, if you've got fiends to an extent, if you've got flamers, if you're able to put out a lot of reliable attacks, awesome. And if they're not like really tough, like again, orcs can get that get that invan, they can get full no pains. They can be a real pain in the butt. Plus, they hit you, they can hurt you badly, and then will just kill your numbers, meaning it's going to be harder for you to deal with them. But Belloc is quite good into killing units like this, or going a long way towards killing units like this, because he's got 12 strength 6 -3, 1 damage shot. They ignore cover, they're dev wounds. The keepers have a similar one where they've got 9 shots at -2, and it doesn't ignore cover. Shalaxis aren't bad because you've got sustain 3 on a per vein. Scarbrand has a 2d6 heavy flamer. The Grand Clearman has a d6 +3 flamer. Plus, he's also got like d6 +1 shots on the flail within 6 inches. So we can do it in certain circumstances, but I do think with Call the Horde, unless you're confident that you're going to be cutting through it, yeah, I would think about it. But to be honest, again, if you're playing against a very heavy Horde army, then you've got to cut through it anyway. So, and maybe sometimes it is just a better option because maybe they've got enough numbers, they've got enough speed or, mobility, maybe they've got loads of scout or, whatever, that they can basically cover the board and make it very hard for you to score those points. Especially if those units don't have characters in, they're now going to basically carpet you, screen you out of any good position, stop you from getting the characters if you draw Assassination, stop you from getting into the deployment zone. So maybe then at some point you might look at it and think, I think Call the Horde, at least I can score points from that because I'll have to kill this. If I don't, I'm going to lose anyway. So yes, it's rarer because again, you're not coming up against loads of options like that. I think in all the games of Pariah I've had, which, is 3 figures at this point, I think I've drawn it and been able to score it maybe twice. So generally it just goes away when I draw it. And then we have Storm Hostile Objective. And Storm Hostile Objective is, 4 points if you take an objective at the end of your turn that your opponent controlled at the beginning of it, or if your opponent controls no objectives and you control at least one or more. So again, you still score points if you've either tabled your opponent or knocked them off all the objectives and they didn't start on any, which is fine. But this can be quite easy to avoid, because if your opponent is on their backfield and they've got it screened, they've got it protected, and they basically don't take objectives off you, but instead they contest them, that's a way to get around it. Obviously, then they're going to be dropping points, but it can be kind of stopped. I find Storm is just a little bit too hard to score in some occasions, but it is an option, and it is 4 points per turn, so it's not like if your opponent only basically decides to just sit on one objective, or if it's the not scouring, scorched earth, which only really requires you to be on 2 objectives, or even Purge of Foe, not Purge of Foe, Purge of Foe, where again you hold one, hold more. Your opponent doesn't need to hold any in the middle as long as they just stop you from holding any. So again, they can almost manipulate that and make it quite hard for you to score in certain turns, and dropping 4 points a turn on what can be a bit of a swingy secondary. Or if your opponent just has so much OC, so many models are able to just push you off and stop you doing it. It can be hard to score, so it's not one that I like a lot. So, action secondaries. We've got Cleanse. So what kind of units are good for Cleanse? And I mean, Screamers, Flesh Hounds, Seekers, Fiends, Blue Horrors, Keepers. Your fast units, your Screamers, Seekers are moving 14 inches, Keepers are moving 14 inches, Flesh Hounds and Fiends are moving 12. And Blue Horrors have Infiltrate and OC, so they can start in the middle and then already start on an objective or near an objective and move on to it. If you're going with Cleanse, you need to make sure you've got speed and you've got OC, or you've got some good damage, basically. So, like being able to rush onto an objective with a Keeper and a unit of Screamers, using the Keeper to kill something that's on the objective that's holding it, and the Screamers do the action. Fine. And then just making sure you've got continuous speed, but also some kind of resiliency. The ground clean one moving up to your natural expansion objective, the one that's in the middle but closer and easier for you to get to, that is a bit more protected. Knowing that you can kind of keep him on that objective, if you can keep it screened, keep it protected, he can just sit there and do Cleanse all game, and he has no problem doing it. He's going to survive most of the game, especially if you're throwing other units out that are causing your opponent issues. So Cleanse, you really want to make sure you've got a lot of fast units, but then of course you can drop and do Cleanse should you need to, using Denizens to get 3 inches on the objective, using Rotigus to get in a spot where he's pathing OC on units on multiple objectives. If, he can kind of sit in between both, and if they're spread out enough, you can kind of catch both objectives or units on both objectives. And then being able to just surge on, do Cleanse is also a nice little trick there. And then Established Locus, again, you kind of want your Established Locus, you want your speed for early game, so Screamers and Flesh Hounds and Fiends to move up and do it first if you're starting the game or you didn't go up and down turn 1, so they can just go to the middle, but then also having your smaller footprints, Screamers, Flamers, Beasts, just because they're generally about that, so they can kind of fit in with the Denizens of the Warp, or even into a 9-inch gap should your opponent leave it. But also dropping things like the ground clean one or Rotigus and like Denizens of the Warp into a part of the board in your opponent's deployment zone, especially in a position where if your opponent wants to bring anything back that's going to be able to kill it, they're going to have to then abandon something in the middle, which is not ideal for them. And then your ground clean one, say for example, he drops down, because before, a while ago, before they got the Shadow update, you would drop him there, but at the end of this gift, he would be on 5-up for an pain. Now he's always on the 4-up, so you can drop him, say, in the back corner of your opponent's deployment zone, behind your opponent's backfoot objective. So now you're going to force your opponent to either have to come around and deal with it, or keep dealing with what you're charging in the middle, which is going to be a problem for them, right? And then small characters as well. Flux Masters and Poxbringers are both very good options for this, because Poxbringers are toughness 5, 5 wounds, 5-up in run, 5-up for no pain. They're a pain in the butt to deal with. They will die. They can definitely die, but they can't just be shot off very easy if you manage to kind of tank those 5-ups. And Flux Masters as well, they've got 4 wounds with the 4-up invuln, T4, but once per game, or once per battle round, sorry, they can flip either a hit roll, wound roll, or a saving throw to a 6. So being able to flip one of those invuns to a 6 is just, incredibly powerful. And also having some CP for, command reroll, so you can also reroll one as well, should you need to, and potentially survive and be able to do it again. So yes, I think you should definitely look at some of the small characters. Poxbringers and Flux Masters are the best options for that, to be honest. Then we're going to look at killing secondaries. So these are the more fun ones, right? Assassination, you want to make sure you're taking your characters that are able to kill bigger characters or be able to pick units out or characters out of units. Shalaxi and Demon Princes with wings, they come with inbuilt precision. Like Shalaxi has it on her Soul Piercer, which is her 6 attacks at strength 14, -3, d6 plus 2 damage. She obviously rerolls hit rolls, wound rolls, and damage rolls into character units. So that's obviously helps her a lot there. Demon Princes with wings can go with either sustained 1, lethal, or precision on their combat attacks. Standard Prince with wings is going to have 6 attacks at strength 8, -2, 3 damage. If it's a Corn Prince, it will be 6 attacks at strength 10, -2, 3 damage. If they've got Argath, they can have 7 attacks or 8 attacks, strength 11, strength 12. If you've got Ren Masters knocking about, extra strength, extra AP, extra damage, you can really buff it. So you've got options there. Or just Greater Demons or Be'lakor if you use the Epic Challenge Stratagem, which is one of the core stratagems. 1 CP gives you precision. And again, Be'lakor is good at killing small characters. Most of the Greater Demons can generally deal with your standardy type of character. And then Bloodthirsters, Scarbrand, even Be'lakor can kill bigger characters. My Be'lakor's killed the Avatar before. It happens. He can do it. As much as sometimes he doesn't like to kill the bigger things, he definitely can. So, and again, always remember for Assassinate, if your opponent's fighting, like if your opponent has a character in a unit and they're hiding them behind walls, you can't use your precision, so be wary of that. Bring it down, not bring it, bringer it down. I don't know why. I think we might have been thinking about the Nightbringer at that point when we wrote that, but bring it down. Again, just make sure you've got the damage. Shalaxi, Scarbrand and Bloodthirsters, Be'lakor, because again, he can kill vehicles when he decides to. Soul Grinders, they are very good. They've got their 5 attacks, strength 16, -3, d6 plus 2 damage. They've also got some shooting, either Sneshi ones with the lash, or the Zinchi ones with the gaze. And Lords of Change as well, strength 12 and strength 11 shooting, D3 damage, but sustain D3 on the big shots. And they can kill lighter vehicles, like things like armigers / war dogs, rhinos, etc., etc. And also battle suits and stuff like that as well. So make sure if bringing down is something you want to kind of consider, or if you do go bring it down because your opponent has a lot of vehicles, you've got the right units to be able to kill them consistently. Blood Crushers can do it as well. Horn with enough Ren Masters definitely can kill vehicles. Bloodletters with a Ren Master knocking about, giving it strength 6 or strength 7 with a couple of them. And the Blood Master in the unit giving them plus on the wound. So they're like damage 4, damage 5. Like good AP, they're cutting through armor. Can also just weigh it down a little bit as well. So again, having options. And then Call the Horde. Be'lakor, he's got, generally any units that are able to be taken in large quantities, they're going to be about T3, T4. Orcs can be T5, but you can kind of manipulate that with ground clean ones and stuff. And they're going to have generally terrible saves unless they're sitting on an invuln through things like a war or something. And again, normally 1 wound. So Be'lakor's Betraying Shade shooting profile, 12 shots, strength 6, -3, 1 damage, dev wounds, ignores cover. He's also got a sweep at 14 attacks, strength 8, -3, 1 damage. So Be'lakor's quite good at cutting through those type of units. Bloodthirsters and Scarbrand have sweeps at multiple damage, high strength. Bloodthirsters with Argath specifically are very good with like 16 strength, 12 -3, 2 damage attacks. If you then stack Ren Masters there, you're getting better AP, better damage, better strength. Not that you generally need it into those type of units, but Lords of Change again with the Everstave, they chuck out enough shots and they roll enough 6s on their Bolt of Change. they can definitely do a lot of work, even if just mostly killing a unit and then being able to finish it off with something else. Blood Crushers, if they go nuts on their mortals and then actually decide they want to hit with their horns and their swords, again, they can run through big units. So again, there are options there if you want to consider these secondaries, or if you know you want to be taken fixed and you want to basically have some kind of play into all of the options. Now, scoring positional secondaries. So positional secondaries, again, they're going to be the secondaries where you have to be in position to score them. So engage in all front or behind enemy lines. Engage, you need to be in quarters. Behind enemy lines, you need to be in your opponent's deployment zone. I guess as well, you can kind of class the action ones kind of like positional. Things like, obviously not fixed, but containment. You have to be within board edges, outside of your deployment zone. But more specifically, locus, because you need to be in your opponent's deployment zone, or the middle, cleanse on objectives. So you need to be able to make sure you're using speed. So again, screamers, fiends, fleshhounds, or I don't. We do speak about that in a minute, so I won't add that bit yet. But using speed and using your terrain for obscuring, because you don't want to always just be throwing a unit out, scoring some points. For example, throwing unit screamers out in the middle of a table quarter, getting some engage, and then it gets shot or charged and killed. Make sure if you can hide behind walls, at least force your opponent to have to try and come out their way to deal with it. And if they don't, or if they can't, you then got continuous turns to keep scoring those secondaries, especially if you just sit in the same place and score them. Using Realm of Chaos to go up and down. Always remember, if you are going with fix, Realm of Chaos is your best friend, because you're going to go up and down, you're going to get into positions. It is incredibly key when going with fix that you do use Realm of Chaos in a lot of cases. And again, same with Denizens of the Warp for that 3-inch deep strike. Make sure you're using it to the best of your effect to be able to drop in those gaps and really maximize those scoring points. Using shadow bubbles to also get multiple units into spaces. For example, let's say you want to drop Be'lakor and, I don't know, a unit of flamers in the backfield. You Denizens of the Warp Be'lakor down, so we can come 3 inches away. You bring 3 flamers down, 2 units in the back. Or like trying to, again, do damage, deny points, and score points. Be'lakor comes down 3 inches away. He drops a Greater Demon or Blood Crushers or something 6 inches away. They charge onto the backfield. You've got 2 units in the back of the board, getting you behind enemy lines. Be'lakor could do Locust if you've got that, if you want him to. The other unit is doing damage on the backfield, taking your opponent's deployment zone objective and denying them points. So again, just thinking, how can you maximize every point possible here? And using Warp Surge to advance and charge to get yourself into different table quarters and deployment zones. We have done, I don't know if it will be out before or after this, but around the same time, the first video of our new focusing on the stratagem series, where we're just going to look at our stratagems and kind of go into depth on the best ways to use them, not just maybe the straightforward, I'm going to move a bit further and then charge, but getting the most out of those secondaries. And Warp Surge is the first one we look at, and this is mentioned in that. Using Warp Surge to get behind enemy lines, I think was the example we used there, but also doing it to get yourself fully into your opponent's deployment zone with a bit of extra movement and then a charge, or same as a table quarter. Very good to really, if you're really clutching your swords, if you really need to grab every point you can, this is a good little tool to be able to do it. So I think we've covered pretty much everything as far as scoring or trying to score fixed secondaries. With demons, we went quite deep into it, covered, all the bases, I think. But yeah, so like we said, always make sure you've got a plan. Don't just say, I'm going to take fixed, but then don't actually think about it. You need to think about it. You also need to, don't be stubborn when it comes to it. I'm always going to take fixed secondaries no matter what, because it's cost me games before where I've taken it and then not too deeply thought about the game, or maybe have deeply thought about the game but went with a different option and it still didn't work and it cost me the game. Sometimes random cards are just a better option, because you are giving your opponent some information which is giving them a slight advantage, while it's also maybe giving you a bit of an advantage as well. Some armies are just very good at fixed because they're just quite hard to stop for doing it, and demons can be one with our constant up and down if you've got enough units. I, again, towards the end of last year, took a list that focused on doing engage, and deploy. And I had like 3 units of screamers, multiple units of flamers, multiple units, 3 units of flesh hounds, 3 units of fiends. I basically took loads and loads of small crap, and the idea was dotting all over the board, doing my actions, doing my secondaries, just trying to flood the middle, deny primary, and basically went off that. Didn't do a lot of damage, but I was essentially just trying to knock my opponent's points down while just consistently scoring mine, and it worked fairly nicely. But it does get a little bit stale. Sometimes you do want to do damage, and those type of lists can be boring to play. So yeah, if you've learned anything from this, please let me know. If you start taking fix because of this videos and you start doing well at events, or you're already doing well at events, it maybe helps you get scoring more points, or just helps you play the game not better, but helps you maybe you are struggling a little bit with cards and they're making you a bit jaded, because cards are cards, right? Just like dice, they're random. You have those games where you just feel like you're drawing dead and your opponent is drawing card after card after card and scoring them all. Sometimes I've had games where I've had 2 turns of scoring nothing because they're the worst cards I can get. And then 3 turns of I can score one of these cards, but not the max. And it is annoying. It's horrible. It's a horrible feeling to get, especially when your opponent is pulling out, 5 points, 6 points, 5 points, 6 points. And you're like, well, what is this? But just like dice, it happens. You take the good with the bad. We all get good cards. We all get bad cards. It is just the way it goes. But yeah, so again, hopefully you can take something from this video and maybe implement it in your games. And if you can, let us know. I'm always happy to hear how people are taking my videos and learning and getting better with demons. It's always a good feeling to hear that. And again, if you like our content, leave a like and subscribe. It massively is appreciated and helps us grow, like we already said. And same with the True Denizens. If you want to become a YouTube member, check that out. You get some cool benefits and a bit more of a direct line from myself and to myself. So, yeah. So, and check out Facebook, Instagram. Keep up to date with all things True Demon Lords, whether it be events, or just channel updates, my updates, etc., etc. So thank you for tuning in. We will catch you all in the next one.